So our stepper card for our Mother's Day card has everything with the little gold paper clip in. So if you want to grab that one, you will also need, sorry for hitting the camera, Melon Mambo ink, your So Saffron ink pad. It's also really helpful to have Melon Mambo, So Saffron, Early Espresso and Gumball Green in Stampin' Right markers. The other accessories that you will need for this particular project are the polka dot embossing folders, perfect polka dots. Again, we're going to be using the Bird Builder punch. And for this project we're also going to be using the 1 1/4 scallop circle punch, the 1 3/4 scallop circle punch, and also the elegant butterfly punch. We've also got a brand new product that we'll be using today, and that's the fringe scissors. These are pretty nifty and very, very cool. And then lastly, we're going to have a bit of decorative detail with one of our decorative border punches. And then there is another product that I'm using. It's one of my favourite products because of its university. And that's our envelope punch board, but I'm going to be using the corner rounder punch, and that's because I particularly like the depth of this one in comparison to the corner rounder punch that we have. But either is absolutely fine, it's just, you know, personal preference really. So let's start off with how to make the card blank, because this is a little bit of a different one. So you're going to start off making your card in exactly the same way that we do the majority of our cards. So fold your A5 piece of very vanilla cardstock in half and then just crease with a bone folder. Now this is the part where it gets a little bit tricky, and you will need to bring in your trimmer. So you want to go 3 inches in. So you want to put the edge of your cardstock up to 3 inches, and that's this section here. And then you want to do the first cut going down 2 inches. Now 2 inches, because if you're in Europe, when you buy your stamping trimmer, you've got inches as well as metric along the top, but your ruler will be in metric. So 2 inches is actually 5 centimetres, so that does make it a little bit easier. So you want to cut all the way down to 5 centimetres. And that's all you want to do to begin with. And then the next section is folding. Now if it makes it easier, you could of course go ahead and also score a line so that the folding section gets easier. And to do that, just move your cutting blade to the bottom, put the folded section of your card blank up to 3 inches, sorry, up to 2 inches, not paying attention, and then score all the way across to the cut. And then if you flip that over, then you can just do the reverse. So you've got it to 2 inches and you're going up. And that would just make it a little bit easier for the folds. And then you want to push that folded section down. So you've got your first line and then your second line. And what you should find is that it gets very, very close to the bottom here. Now that would be how to make your normal step card. However, I prefer to have a little bit more depth with mine. So the next step that we're going to do is a little bit trickier, because we now need to cut down an extra inch on this section, but just at the front, not all the way down. So the way to do that is 1 inch is just over 2.5 centimetres. So that's the bit that I'm going to remember. Going to line that up to 3 inches at the side again. Just going to this bit. It does take a little bit. If it makes it easier, just measure down 1 inch with your ruler and make a little mark. And you could do that with pencil, or I'll just use my little So Saffron pen. Just to make a tiny, tiny little mark there. Probably make it easier than trying to work out the centimetres and everything. So put that up to 3 inches. Your cutting blade goes in, and then you're going to cut down to that 1 inch mark. And again, this time we are going to score it. So an easier way to do it, rather than doing lots of measuring, is butt the end of the card up to 1 inch and score the line up from the bottom. And then just fold that down as well. So what should happen is that the ends should meet just at the bottom, and then you're going to need to fold this section back again. So this was the 2 inch one that we did originally. We've just folded our score mark there, and then we're taking this back again and we're matching this fold to the bottom, like so. And hopefully, when I've done all of that, it should give us the perfect little step. I've got a little bit of a nick there, so that means I can just go and tidy that up. So like I said, a little bit more kind of measuring on that one. So let me just go through what we did again. So we started off cutting 2 inches and then folding, and then on the front section we cut down another inch and then folded 2 sections back in on themselves. And that's how we created our little stepper card. So now that we've done that, we want to pop the elements of our card together, as you can see, so that it gives it a bit more depth and definition. So to do that, the first thing that we're going to do is take some Gumball Green. So both of these have been cut to 2 7/8, but first off we've got one at 1.5 inch depth and one at 1 inch depth. And what you'll need to do is either measure or score, it's entirely up to you, 1/2 inch, quarter of an inch from the end. So for me, I'm just going to match this one up on the trimmer. It's always harder to do this when you're using a smaller section. So the way that I do mine is I just hold it in place with the bone folder, and then once I've got the ruler down in place, it's absolutely fine. So I've done that one to 1/4 inch. If you want to make it so that you've got a bit more of a depth for the grass, like I have here, then you can do it to 1/2 inch. So if I just pop that one into the middle again. So either 1/2 or 1/4, down to your personal preference. Whichever one you do, you'll need to do on the other side. I'm going to do 1/2 inch because it just makes it a little bit easier for me. Score that line again, and like I said, you could either score it or measure it. It's entirely up to you. The only reason that we've done that is so when we're using our fringe scissors, it means we know where to cut up until. So I'm literally going right the way to that score line. I'm just going to go all the way across. See how cool are those scissors? I'm just going to do one on that side as well. And then again, I'm going to do the same on this side as well. So I'm going to go down to, and this one I've gone just past the 1/2 inch. There you go. Now, because we've done them 2 different depths, that's what's going to create even more of a step for this section. As you can see how those elements are going to come together, just like so. Wonderful. Just got to fold. I've missed one of my fold lines. With me being in too much of a rush, probably. If that happens to you, all you need to do is refold the section and just take your bone folder so that it all folds into place, like so. Excellent, that's better. For this one, again, you could either use your Snell adhesive or you could use your multi-purpose glue. So I'm just going to add some of the glue just along the bottom and line that one up. Like so. And then do exactly the same for the other one. And then popping that one into place as well. Lining that one up. So now we've done our grass sections, we can start popping the other elements of the card together. And the order in which you do this, it's really entirely up to you. But as you can see, we've stamped and punched out a number of the flowers as well as the butterfly. So let's start with that. For mine, I've used 5 of the smaller flowers so that I could build them up, but it really is entirely up to you how you would like to do yours. So for this one, just to be a little bit different, I'm actually going to stamp out 3 in Melon Mambo. Make it a little bit more pink, I guess. And stamp, actually I'm going to stamp out 3 again in the So Saffron so that I can play around with it and see which way I'd prefer it. And then all you'll need to do is take your 1 1/4 inch punch, line it up so that the flower has got a really nice border all the way around, and then just punch out. Like I said, if you don't have one of these punches, you can cut round it yourself, but it does make it so much easier if you've got the punch. And a lot quicker too. And then just trim off where I've been punching so that I can then continue to punch on the next section. So again, just line that up. Excellent. Okay, so now I'm going to use the larger flower, so just going to mount that onto the block. And this time I'm going to do 1 of each, so 1 in So Saffron and 1 in Melon Mambo. And I just used a stamping scrub to clean my stamps in between, just because it makes it so much quicker. I love the vibrancy of Melon Mambo. It's just such a beautiful colour. Okay, so for this one it's the 1 3/4 inch punch. And again, you want to do exactly the same thing, just to make sure that you've got an even border all the way around. And punch out. And the same on the other side. So to pop the elements for the larger ones together, again we'll use Stampin' Dimensionals. Now you could either do the same as I've done here. Excuse me. which is to match the colours, or you could do opposites. So just so that you can see the contrast, I would do opposites on this one. Pop that together. Same with the other one. And these two are going to go at the back of the card. Now, you can either have them flash to the card like I've got here, or again, you could use Stampin' Dimensionals. It's entirely up to you. For most of these, again, I'll use the multi-purpose adhesive, and that's just then because I can play around with them if I need to move them slightly to make sure that they overlap properly. There you go. And then again, just really easy to pop the other sections together. And you could, you know, still do this the way that you would like to. So if you want larger ones to go at the on the second tier as well, then by all means do. Okay, and I'm probably going to pop. I'm actually think I'm going to pop another So Saffron at the front, and I'm going to move the butterfly actually to this side and do it in Melon Mambo, just again so that you've got a bit of a difference. So just clean off that stamp, mount the butterfly stamp onto the block, and then for this one, it really is up to you entirely. As you can see, I've used early espresso on the outside to make it really dark, but you can do it whichever way that you want. I'm going to use early espresso again because I think the dark brown and the pink will go really nicely together. So I'm going to do all the middle sections in Melon Mambo. It doesn't matter if I go slightly around the outside because the early espresso is a darker colour, so it's going to hide that anyway. So as you can see, not being terribly careful, and then just going around with the early espresso. Now you will need to be a little bit more careful when you're doing the middle sections, so as not to take off all of the Melon Mambo. So especially when you come to these middle sections, so just spend a little bit more time. It is worth it because the definition looks ever so pretty. And it really doesn't matter how long it takes you to colour in a stamp either, because you can always just breathe on the stamp to reawaken the ink if you think, you know, you've taken a really long time and the ink's going to dry out. So once you've done that, again just stamp out the image. Now I want to make this a little bit more prominent, so I'm going to go back in with the journaling side of my Stampin' Right marker, and I'm just going to go around the edges. And that's just so that I can make the pink stand out just that little bit more. And it can give it a little bit more definition as well. And if you wanted to, I mean, you could colour in these sections in the pink. It would be entirely up to you. But can you see how much that section stands out in comparison to the other? So it really does make it stand out just that little bit more. And what might look really nice is if you chose a really light pink, something like Blushing Bride, to then colour in the sections, and then you'd have another contrast again that would look really quite pretty. I'm just going to bring in soft suede, because I want to make the body a slightly different colour. I want that to be a little bit lighter brown. So it's not a huge amount of difference, but there is a slight one, probably one that you can't see quite so well on the camera, but you can when you see it in the flesh, as it were. So we're taking the elegant butterfly punch, just going to line that up and punch that one out. And then for this one, I will then just bend up the wings and then scoop them out slightly, just so again I can give it a bit more definition. And it would just be the centre section that I add the adhesive to, so that it's a little bit freer on the card. And this time we'll add that one about there. Now, because we're using the liquid adhesive, you will need to hold it into place just a little while until it takes. Sometimes I find it easier to use the bone folder, because I can literally just use the side and that's exactly where I'm adhering it. Marvellous, and that pops that into place. So we've now done this section of the card, and we're now going to be working on the Mother's Day detail. So to do that, you've already got a couple of sections that are pre-cut for you. So we've got a piece of melon mambo, and that one measures 2 7/8 by 4 inches. And this one we're going to run through the Big Shot machine with the perfect polka dots. And we're going to do the same for the So Saffron piece. Now the So Saffron measures 2.5 inches by 3 3/4 inches, so just slightly smaller. So we need to put both of those through the Big Shot machine, clearing some space. And again, for this one you're going to need your multi-purpose platform. Because it's an embossing folder, we're going to use tab 1. So cutting plate goes on the bottom. You then bring in your embossing folder. And for this one we can actually emboss both pieces at the same time. They literally just fit on. So just trying to make sure they're lined up, that's fine. Cutting plate goes over the top, pop that through the machine, and then just scroll it through. Okay, and we've got 2 embossed sections with perfect polka dots. Now to finish off the detail for the So Saffron, we're going to bring in our border punch and just punch out that side. So it's a little bit wider than the actual punch section, so I'm trying to centre it, and then I will need to go and match up the design like we did with the other punch. And exactly the same on the other end. So again, just trying to centralise that. It just gives it a really nice edge. Those can then be adhered together. For that I'm just going to use some snail adhesive. And if you centre it, the So Saffron section, so just pop it on centered as much as possible. And then the last piece that we've got is a piece of very vanilla, and that one has been cut to 2 5/8 by 2 5/8. Now for the greeting for this one, I have used another stamp set, and this one's called My Mother. It is in the Spring Summer catalogue. It's 133083 if you're buying the clear set. And we're going to use the Happy Mother's Day. It's a really nice sized font, I think, for this particular card, or in fact any Mother's Day card really. I'm just going to grab another block for that one. And ideally, again, you could stamp this in any colour that you prefer. I'm going to use Melon Mambo because, again, like I said, it's a really vibrant colour that stands out well. Didn't add it to the block very well. I need to clean my blocks. Okay, so just inking that one up. And then I can centralise that. And then, as mentioned before, I'm going to be bringing in our envelope punch board and using the corner rounder punch at the end. It's got a really nice depth to it. So just on all 4 corners, and then that can also go onto our mat. And it's entirely up to you whether you try putting yours on straight. I quite like mine at a jaunty angle. I think that kind of suits this particular card. And then I can add that to the card blank. And then the last detail that we're going to do for this one is the bird. And that would just finish it off nicely. So you can see that it's really coming together well. So again, just clean off the butterfly stamp. Just bringing in the bird again. Now this time I did do a little bit of a different detail, so I've coloured the head of the bird in So Saffron, and again I've not been particularly too careful with the head, and I've also used So Saffron for the wing, just so I've got a bit of continuity. But then I've used Melon Mambo to colour in the body of the bird. So again, I can be quite rough to begin with, but then as I get towards the neck, I'm just going to be quite precise and follow the pattern on the rubber. And this time for the leaves, I'm going to use Gumball Green, and that's because the cardstock that we used for the grass was Gumball Green. So again, we've got continuity there. And again, for the stem, I'll use Early Espresso. And this is then just stamped out again onto the Very Vanilla. And then you can use the Bird Builder punch to punch that out. So just line it up. Punch out. Okay, so again I do want to add a little bit more detail to the eye of the bird, and this time I'm actually going to make it quite dark. I'll use the Early Espresso, and that's again just so all the colours match. And then we're going to build that one up. So multi-purpose adhesive for the leaves, as we did before. Going a little bit onto the stem. That's going to go up. And then I'm actually, for this one, I'm going to make the bird flat, but then make the wing stand up. Now, instead of putting the wing on first, I'm actually going to pop the bird on first, and that's so I can work out exactly where to position it and then where to position the bird, because obviously this time I've got wording to work in and around. And then there you go, and there's your little Mother's Day card. Very pretty.